today we're going to talk about the 4 reflections that turn the mind towards enlightenment and turn the mind towards Dharma.
Hola a todos y diles gracias a Carolina y para todos y bienvenido acá.
Hola and greetings to everyone. Welcome here.
Entonces hoy nosotros compartimos sobre cada 4 reflexiones, ¿no? Como volviendo la mente hacia Dharma.
And so today we're going to talk about the 4 reflections that turn the mind towards Dharma.
Entonces es realmente muy importante práctica budista, tiene mucha práctica, es como esencia de práctica de Dharma, es un práctica fundamento de nuestra vida.
And so there are many practices in Buddhism, and these reflections are fundamental to really understanding how to apply this philosophy in our daily life.
Entonces esas 4 reflexiones son, primero, vida preciosa, y luego, ley de la impermanencia, y ley de conspecto, y la defecto de samsara.
So the 4 reflections are the precious human life, the law of impermanence, the law of cause and effect, and the defect of samsara.
Entonces cuando nosotros hablamos preciosa vida humana, entonces es muy importante reconocer una preciosa vida humana que tiene una mayor capacidad, mayor entendimiento y también potencial de liberarse del sufrimiento y encontrar la mayor felicidad.
And so, like, what we refer to by the precious human life is to have the leisure and endowments and conditions to really be able to attain, like, the ultimate happiness and to be fully liberated.
Entonces, preciosa vida humana quiere decir no solo todos seres nacidos vida humana no es preciosa, porque muchos seres humanos es peor que animales como dañando, dedicando las cosas negativas. Eso no es preciosa.
And so what do we actually mean by a precious human life? Because like there are many human beings in the world, but they're utilizing their life to like create a lot of pain and suffering for others. And so that's not actually a precious human life.
Preciosa vida humana significa realmente que tiene como ventaja, como cualidad interior, buen corazón, la tiene amor, la compasión, la conciencia. Ese es preciosa vida humana.
Like a precious human life is one that is really developing inner qualities such as generosity and patience and love and compassion. This is actually like a precious human being.
Entonces eso es muy difícil encontrar. Imagino nos pensamos en tortuga, ¿no? Tortuga, serpiente. Y yo como nací cada momento sin huevos, sin animalito. Entonces precioso humano máximo puede nacer 2 humanos.
And so like actually it's quite rare to have a precious human life. Like I mean even just thinking about like other animals such as a turtle or a snake, they can have maybe 100 eggs at the same time, but normally speaking a human being only has 1 and maximum 2 at a time.
Entonces por eso es importante reconocer ese valor que tenemos nosotros y estamos nosotros ya logrado ese que tenemos nosotros es vida preciosa.
And so it's really important for us to recognize that it was actually quite difficult for us to obtain the form of a precious human being or a precious human life.
Entonces, el Buda dice, ¿no? Todos los seres tienen potencial de como Buda, digo, ¿no? Como semilla, como que hay posibilidad de hacer como seres iluminados, como el Buda. Buda significa como desperto, como conciencia.
So Buddha, or like the awakened consciousness, and the supreme beings have said that every living being has the seed of Buddhahood and has the potential to awaken.
Entonces, por eso claro, todos seres tienen potencial, hasta animal, insectos ya tienen potencial, pero muy nada sería una condición de humano, porque a través de la 1000 Budas o 1000 maestros iluminan a través de forma de humanos, no a través de animales.
And so even though each of the insects and the animals and all of the beings have the potential to awaken, it is actually essential to have the conditions of a precious human life to actually fully awaken. So the thousands of humans that have become Buddhas, all of them did so through the human form, not through an animal form.
Por eso es muy importante reconocer eso, oh, yo soy vida preciosa, humano, por eso yo no voy a hacerla como maldad, como animal, ¿no? Yo soy ser humano, porque ser humano tiene una conducta especial, ¿no? Como ser divino.
And so it's really important for us to recognize that we are a precious human and that we actually want to develop and continue to polish the conduct of a human. We don't want to act like animals or act without any awareness. We really want to act in such a way that we can that we are a divine being.
Por eso es muy importante nosotros cuerpo, palabra, mente, siempre entonces nosotros como servicio de como positivo, beneficio a los demás, crecer, no haciendo servicio de cosas negativas.
And so we really want to put a lot of awareness and attention towards cultivating virtuous actions through body, speech, and mind, and make sure that we're not creating suffering or harm for any of the beings.
Ok, entonces por eso es vida preciosa nosotros. Segundo es importante, no suficiente tener vida preciosa, y somos impermanencia, ¿no? Entonces todo nosotros exige perder, ¿no? O tú digas, yo tengo vida preciosa, ya todo el día, reconocer no suficiente, sin acción, ¿no? Como si un auto tiene un garaje todo el día, guardado 1000 años, pero no está transportando nada, entonces no hay beneficio.
And so secondly, the second reflection is around impermanence. It's not just sufficient just to recognize that we have a precious human life. We have to recognize that this body is also impermanent. And so we can't just sit there and not act upon this precious human life. It's kind of just like having, an amazing car, but we're leaving it in the garage and never utilizing it. It's really not going to be of much benefit.
Entonces, precioso humano como un mejor vehículo para transportar nuestra conciencia hacia despiertos.
And so really the precious human body or precious human life is actually the best vehicle to transport us towards enlightenment and awakening.
Entonces sigue ese también como impermanencia, ¿no?
And we need to recognize that it is impermanent.
¿No? Y entonces no tener apegado con eso, ¿no? Pero no pero puede cuidar, pero no apegarse.
So we want to make sure that we're not attached to just our form. We can take care of it, but we don't want to be attached to it.
Como digo, yo tengo como huevo, ¿no? Como la cáscara de huevo, ¿no? Porque el huevo es como para nosotros en el cuerpo, ¿no? Pero muy importante, mucho cuidamos, ¿no? Y dentro del líquido que tenemos como conciencia, cuando nosotros cocinamos, mientras ese huevo cocinando, y entonces cuando cocinamos ese cáscara de huevo en la basura, no hay apegos, ¿no? Y entonces nosotros solo como la huevo duro comemos.
And so I like to use the example of an egg. Like we all take care of the eggshell in order to take care of the contents on the inside, and it's just like that. Like we really want to take care of this body because it is our vehicle to really be able to develop and kind of cook our consciousness. And once we're able to fully ripen this consciousness and ripen this awakening, then we actually don't need that vehicle anymore. But it's very essential that we take care of it as best as we can to really be able to take care of the consciousness.
Es importante, ¿no? Y uno de como 4 sellos de una de las frases de sello de Buda dice, todos los fenómenos compuestos son impermanencia.
So in the 4 great seals of the Buddha, the first one is that all things that are composed are emptiness.
Impermanencia.
They are impermanent, which is also emptiness.
También emptiness, ¿no? Entonces es como impermanencia, como llama Bhagavad está conectado a la base.
Impermanence and emptiness are actually very connected.
Porque todo está compuesto, todo interdependencia basado en eso. Por esa posibilidad hace una vacuidad.
Because all things are composed and they are always interdependent, and so they don't exist on their own, which means they exist in emptiness.
Entonces todo como nuestro emoción, nuestra rabia, nuestro apego, todo lo viene que todo está como se llama, compuesto, condicionado, por eso y vacuidad.
And so all of these emotions that we experience, like anger and attachment and envy, all of these things, like, they are impermanent. They come and they go. So they're actually empty. They're like not existing solidly on their own.
Y entonces eso es importante comprender la impermanencia, ¿no?
And so it's essential that we understand this law of impermanence.
Por eso es importante como un ejemplo de arcoíris. Tú miras el arcoíris, puedes ver en forma belleza, lindo, ¿no? Pero mismo tema de tener vacuidad, inseparable, apariencia y vacuidad inseparable.
And so it's kind of like looking at the example of a rainbow. We can see the rainbow, but we can't touch the rainbow. It both appears as well as it's empty at the same time.
Esa manera nosotros permite poder más vivir presente, porque nosotros normalmente 1000 años tenemos proyectos como si fuera viviendo 1000 años, ¿no? Nuestras sensaciones, ¿no? Entonces realmente nosotros nos da cuenta como de impermanencia.
And so this really gives us kind of more motivation to put action like presently and right now. I mean, we have like thousands of years of projects in our minds, and it's as if we're living all of those projects all at the same time, but it's really essential. We can put our motivation and our efforts towards those projects, but it's also really important to understand impermanence.
Por eso su sentido Dalai Lama dice, dos cosas no puede hacer. Uno se llama ayer, uno es la mañana, ¿sabes por qué? No sabemos realidad. Ya pasó, buena, malo, ya pasó una experiencia. El futuro todavía no puede venir. Muy importante ahora, ese presente viene de hacer futuros.
And so that's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama said there are two things that we have no control over. One of them is called yesterday, and one of them is called tomorrow. Yesterday has already happened, we cannot change it. And tomorrow, we don't truly know what's going to happen tomorrow. So it's very essential that we cultivate presence and really act presently.
Ese va a ser fruto para el futuro, ¿no?
And this will become a fruit of tomorrow.
Ese impermanencia comprende cada momento, ¿no?
And so it's really essential to train our minds to understand impermanence in each moment.
Okay. Luego tres, ¿cuál es? Ley de impermanencia, ley de la causa y efectos.
And so the third one is the law of cause and effect.
Como ley de causa, como las karmas, ¿cierto?
And this is like karma.
Karma es como, mucha gente a veces piensa en solo negativo. Karma significa acción.
And a lot of people really seem to think that karma is something negative, but in simple terms, it just means action.
Entonces, acción de la cuerpo, palabra, mente.
It is the actions of body, speech, and mind.
Más importante, acción de la mente, ¿no?
And what is most essential is the actions of the mind.
Donde produce fuente de acción.
It is the fountain of all of the actions.
Cuando equivocamos, acción de la mente va a equivocar palabra y cuerpos.
Whenever we are erroneous in the actions of the mind, it produces negative actions in the speech and the body.
Entonces, ¿por qué es importante tener esa ley de la causa y efectos, interdependencia?
So why is this law of cause and effect and interdependence
Porque
essential?
nosotros queremos como felicidad, no queremos sufrimiento. Porque todo tendo sufrimiento, tendo felicidad, tiene que ver con la ley de la causa y efectos, ¿verdad?
Because we want happiness and we don't want suffering. And truly, all of the happiness or suffering that we experience come from this law of cause and effect.
Entonces, comprende eso, ¿no? Reflexiona con eso, ¿no?
So it's essential that we really comprehend it and reflect on it daily.
Acción positiva como amor, hacer feliz. Acción negativa como rabia, ignorancia, sufrimiento.
So actions like anger and envy, these types of things create suffering, and actions like love and compassion, they create happiness.
Entonces, por eso nosotros queremos acción positiva, ¿no?
So we really want to dedicate ourselves to positive action.
Entonces, no solamente mucho tiempo ya están grabados con esa acción negativa, por eso es muy difícil la mente volver hacia Dharma, ¿no?
And really, we've had a lot of practice with our minds kind of sitting in these negative actions, and so that's why it's hard for us to train to turn our mind towards Dharma.
Eso, ¿no? Entonces, el cuarto se llama defecto de samsara.
And so the fourth one is called the defect of samsara.
Samsara, samsara es el puro defecto, no hay felicidad verdadera, ¿no?
So samsara has pure like defects in it. It's not like true and lasting happiness.
Samsara es rueda de sufrimiento o rueda de pensamiento, y entonces samsara externo, samsara interiores.
So samsara is like the wheel of suffering, or like the wheel of certain like mindsets that we have.
Samsara repite lo mismo, todo cosa mismo repetir porque mañana a la mañana, poco felicidad, después poco sufrimiento, siempre cambiando y temporalmente, ¿no?
Samsara is like kind of like this never-ending wheel of kind of challenge and suffering. It's like always switching through, you know, like one moment I'm happy, one moment I'm sad, one moment I'm angry, and then we just like always moving through these different types of mindsets.
Ahí juzgamos, nosotros con eso perdemos, atrapados con eso, ¿no?
And then we just get lost and trapped in this wheel,
Entonces, tendo externo, tendo interno, ¿no?
both externally as well as internally.
Entonces, internamente no solamente, momento viene mucho fuerte, repiten lo mismo de pasado y futuro, es el, como círculo de pensamiento. Ese es uno samsara.
And then we have like cyclic thoughts that are like always repeating the past and the future. This is like samsara.
Entonces, ahí como para salir de eso, es importante ver samsara no tener felicidad verdadera. Voy a salir voy como nirvana, como liberarte de samsara, como alcanzar la nirvana.
And so the way to leave this wheel of suffering is to like actually shift our focus to saying that like the happiness that we are seeking is really like full liberation, like we're seeking nirvana.
Entonces nirvana es más allá de los sufrimientos.
And nirvana is beyond suffering.
Oh, ya, ese no se quiere meta, ¿no? Ese no se meta.
And so this is our goal.
Entonces, resumiendo esas 4 reflexiones, nosotros podemos, mi recomendación, puede hacer uno como un poco separado, puede reflexionar cada semana y también puede hacer todo junto una vez, 1 hora en la mañana. En realidad, todo el día puede reflexionar eso.
And so really my recommendation for how to work with these, there's like a couple ways you could work with it. One is to choose one of those and reflect on that for a whole week, and all throughout the day, like continue to remind yourself about this and reflect and contemplate. And the other way is like you could reflect on all 4 in the morning and just continue to turn your mind back towards that throughout the day.
Entonces, mira, es importante, cuando un momento tú, pero porque muy desanimada, poco muy mala, bajada de energía, ese momento tú inhalar y exhalar, reconocer, ¿no? Momentos tú sientes, ¿no? Impotente, soy pobre, yo no puedo, algo, muchas cosas nos juzgando nuestro ego entero, ¿no? Esto diga tener, yo tengo preciosos vidas humanos, tengo potencial, que yo quiero, puedo, ¿no? Quiero como Buda, más difícil encontrar como alcanzar Buda porque es humano, él es como ser humano, igual que nosotros, y él como completamente como despierto, ¿no?
And so, especially like in those moments of deep challenge when we're struggling and we're like, you know, really feeling like we don't have potential, we don't have the skills, feeling really dismotivated, that's a really good moment to like sit there and reflect and say, you know, I have a precious human life and I have all of the potential to really recognize my inner qualities, and I really can learn to do anything. And of course I have challenges in life because I'm not Buddha yet, like I haven't fully awakened. And like a Buddha can, when they're fully awakened, can really be able to utilize their full human potential. And so it's just reminding ourselves that we have this potential.
Cuando la mente negativa, por ejemplo, algo cosa de eso, rabia cualquiera, yo soy ser humano, no voy a pensar eso.
And so like in a moment of anger, for example, or it's afflicting emotion, we can also like stop and think like, oh, I'm a divine human being. Like I don't need to go too far in that story.
No soy demonio.
I'm not like a monster.
Eso pensaría. Y entonces cuando un momento viene mucho a veces, por ejemplo, la mente bien agitada, pasado, futuro mucho, ¿no? Ese momento ayuda a impermanencia. Todo es impermanencia importante, ¿no? Esto la mente trayendo presente momento, disfrutar.
And especially when we're having a moment of like the mind just going wild and feeling like really a lot of afflictions all at one time, that's a really good moment to remember impermanence. Like and really bring our mind back towards this present moment right now and enjoy it.
El momento de poco no sufrimiento y estamos en un momento de felicidad viene, ¿no? Es comprender la ley de la impermanencia.
And then in like the moments of like a suffering or in the moments of happiness, like really remembering the law of cause and effect and interdependence, like we cultivated that.
El momento de cómo está pasando como ilusión, como desafío, las cosas, ¿no? Espera como samsara, esa ilusión, es un sueño pesado, ¿no? Solo me dejar fluir.
And so like in a moment when we're also frustrated or confused or something, it's just like recognizing that moment that like the defect of samsara, like this is samsara, it always goes through these wheels, and just allow it to be, just like flow on with life.
Y eso. Entonces eso para ti es muy esencial y realmente mucho beneficioso. Y entonces más importante poner en la práctica esas reflexiones, ¿no?
And so this practice is like really essential, and it's very, very helpful. And so what's most helpful is that you actually put it into practice.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. So thank
Gracias.
you for listening to the 4 reflections that turn the mind towards enlightenment, and just remember that all throughout the day continue to turn your mind towards these reflections, because it can help us to really have a deep motivation to study more deeply and to really understand and see life as it is. So muchas gracias.